But I just look at the country now, and there seems to be so little common sense and so little unity, and the cities are nothing like they used to be. They're unrecognizable. Even London 10 years ago was a completely different place. Is it a losing battle, do you think?
Yes. So the battle is lost.
Because I still believe, despite my personal beliefs, that Christian countries should be Christian and Islamic countries should be Islamic. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And then we
Really? He's not making sense right now.
can go down the conversation as to whether England is being conquered and occupied because there's a power vacuum because Christianity's become so weak, which I actually think is the main problem. And that's the reason I think a lot of this is happening. But I just look at...
He still believes that Christian countries should be Christian countries and Islamic countries should be Islamic. If that was true, why didn't I hear him use his voice and influence to condemn Azerbaijan for ethnically cleansing Christians from their land, a land that they have lived in for thousands of years? This idea that Christianity has become weak is absolute garbage. The moral degradation of the West has nothing to do with Christianity, but everything to do with secularism. It's like I have to keep repeating myself with this guy. The West is no longer Christian. It hasn't been Christian since the separation of church and state. Christianity is the only hope in the West fighting to restore the moral fabric of the West. Secular liberal ideologies like feminism is burning the Western world to the ground.
But I just look at the country now, and there seems to be so little common sense and so little unity, and the cities are nothing like they used to be. They're unrecognizable. Even London 10 years ago was a completely different place. Is it a losing battle, do you think?
Yes. So the battle is lost for my country, your country. It's over.
Wow, she said that quite quick and very enthusiastically. Almost as if she's happy about it. Well, that's the impression I got anyway. No, the battle is definitely not lost. I don't know what she's talking about.
Over, but it doesn't mean... I mean, I say
you can enjoy the war, huh?
Yeah, well, exactly. You win the battle to win the war. So maybe the war is over, but the fight now is the battles. So for me, it's the battle of the morale of the troops, right? It's the battle of the keeping that rock solid for as long as we can be solid, for gathering our side and lifting them up and showing that we won't go down without carrying this through. You know, I'm all about holding the line, right?
Yeah.
So there's the optimism, and I will always go to optimism when I have to. I believe in a darker conversation.
She's talking absolute nonsense.
The war is over, and in time, Christians will move to Eastern lands, so to Eastern Europe.
Yeah.
We will pull back to Poland, Hungary, potentially Romania, and those lands. And in time, there will be the new Crusades, or there will not. But my view is very much like a relay runner. You know, we carry the baton.
Yeah.
And I think probably you've reached a place, I certainly have many, many years ago, where as long as when I do my leg with the baton, I deliver that thing, I carry it. And, you know, if I can shove it up someone's arse to piss them off at the same time, I'll do that too.
Yeah.
And then I will lay it in the hand. I will push it into the hand of That's my role as I see it.
Yeah.
And it might not involve the finish line and some medals.
Yeah.
It might.
She's just talking nonsense. Just talking for the sake of talking. Is the war lost? Maybe for the atheist who doesn't have an objective moral standard that's founded in God that gives him purpose and hope. But for us Christians, we will never stop fighting the war. The war doesn't stop until Jesus comes to judge the living and the dead. And fighting this war includes converting the atheist, the feminist, the Satanist, the Muslim, the Hindu, the Sikh, the LGBTQ, converting everyone back to Christ. And if we have to fight to protect ourselves and the innocent, then that's what we will do. But the war is definitely not over. Only Jesus can put an end to this war.
I understand you completely. So the next question I have is, why do you think the ruling elites of the West are doing this? Why do you think the people in charge of England are doing what they're doing?
Good question.
I think it's easier to...
Do you have a theory?
I do.
Okay.
Great question. It's definitely not money and power. I came to this realization about 2 years ago. I used to think it was. I'm curious to hear what Hopkins will have to say about this, though.
But to go back to where we were, which is where we were, which was what's the theory, is it's easier to manage decline than it is to defend or grow a country or protect it. So the Trump model is the hardest route to take, to try and defend a country, to try and build a country, to become energy, independent as he did, to put walls up. It's hard to do that stuff. You just...
Sounds plausible, but I don't buy it.
Going to be attacked on all corners all the time. But to let a country just decline away and take the money as it declines is so easy. And it's what, ever since Thatcher, I'd argue, that's what governments have done.
I think that's a perfect way to put it, because when you're trying to fix dysfunction, you're right, that's extremely difficult, but instead it's easier to normalize the dysfunction. Let's normalize dysfunction. Oh, it's a large city. There's terror attacks. It's a big city. No big deal.
And then
heart attack.
What? And lose their country. Lose their nations because they don't want to fix dysfunction. That doesn't make any sense. They're just talking nonsense.
It's no big deal. You had a heart attack. Oh, who knows why? He's a footballer. He was running. Of course he had a heart attack. So they normalize the dysfunction and try and make as much money as possible, and then they fly on a jet somewhere else.
Exactly.
Do they really think it's that simple? Please, give me a break. Her theory is that it's easier to manage decline than to protect it or grow a country and build it. And Andrew Tate added, it's easier to normalize dysfunction. Both of their theories sounds plausible at face value, but to be honest with you guys, I don't agree. I think it's bullshit. I don't think their theory is remotely close to the truth. These politicians didn't just wake up one morning and found that same-sex marriage, gender pronouns, puberty blockers, the idea that gender is just a social construct, abortion, women in the workplace, the sexualization of children in schools were all of a sudden legalized. These changes didn't just happen in a vacuum or overnight. The fact that it took over 100 years, feminism started in what? Late 1800s? The fact that it has taken so long, it shows intention, it shows planning, it shows organization, it shows purpose. Whether all of the politicians or just some of the politicians are involved, it makes no difference. Whoever is pulling the strings, they obviously have the power to make it happen. If you can't see the intent behind, first, women entering the workforce, by the way, I'm stating these chronologically. Second, raising the cost of living. Third, the legalization of the pill. Fourth, the legalization of abortion. Fifth, the sexual revolution. Sixth, the legalization of same-sex relationships. Seventh, the legalization of sex education in schools. The Great Society program. If you can't see that the intent behind all of this was to destroy the nuclear family, religion, and usher in a new agenda, then I don't know what to say to you. They haven't just legalized that a teacher can teach children that a human family isn't just a man and a woman, but can also be a woman and a woman and a man for no reason, or just because they are just managing decline. They haven't just legalized puberty blockers and gender affirming surgery because it's easier to manage decline. They did not just make praying in your head outside of an abortion clinic illegal because it's easier to manage decline. They did not put things in place, example abortion, to lower the birth rate to the extent where right now the West is not reproducing enough to replace themselves, whilst making us believe that the earth is overpopulated because it's easier to manage decline. They are doing this for a reason. Do you want to know what my theory is? My theory is that everything that they have put in place since the separation of church and state, I'm talking about the satanic ideologies like feminism, secular humanism, etc., have been over decades to socially engineer us to subconsciously and consciously accept a new religion, which they will bring out in the open once the majority at least have accepted it subconsciously. I'll give you an example. How many of you are indifferent about abortion? Meaning that you don't necessarily agree with it, but it doesn't really make a difference to you if it's legal or illegal. It doesn't really weigh on your conscience. Let me tell you what has just happened to you, all right, if you are indifferent about abortion. You have just been psychologically and spiritually conditioned to accept child sacrifice. I can actually go through stage by stage how the process actually happens on the psychological and spiritual plane. Once you become indifferent to something like the protection of an innocent life, you have now been psychologically and spiritually desensitized enough to be convinced to join the new religion, which is the occult, the worship of self and Satan.
But do you not think that the Islamification of Britain is Christians' fault?
That's like asking, is the Pope in charge of the country? Last time the Pope was in charge of the state, we had the Crusades. How can the Islamification and secularization of the West be Christians' fault when we are not in charge of the state? European kings wanted to be independent of the church, and they managed to get their way in the 17th century. And this is how the secular world was born. This is how liberal ideologies like feminism, evolution, Marxism, atheism, wokeism came about. And now you are going to blame Christians? It's important to point out that all these secular ideologies are inherently anti-Christian. 3 centuries of these ideologies influencing the Western population, not to mention the attempts of atheist leaders to wipe out Christians directly and indirectly during wars. Is it any wonder then that with all the death and destructions atheist leaders caused in the 19th century, the results would have weakened the Christian moral fabric of the West, making them more susceptible to the trappings of these ideologies that only really was put into practice in the 1960s?
Do you blame the Christians because power vacuums are filled and this is the basic law of the universe? The lion destroys the antelope and the strong conquer the weak. And if there's going to be weak convictions amongst the white Christians, if they're going to be too tolerant and too nice, don't you feel like eventually they're going to be conquered? Not only just by Islam, but they've also been conquered by secularism.
If I was to take Andrew Tate's claim seriously that the West is indeed being Islamified, a claim which I don't necessarily agree with because there are other bigger forces at play here, my first question would be, why is the West allowing it? Anyways, if I was to entertain Andrew's claim, here's what I would say. First of all, the Islamification of the West is secularism's fault, not Christianity's fault. If Christians were in charge, we would have never allowed it. Just like we didn't allow it during the Crusades in the 11th century, and you atheists still haven't thanked us for that yet. This is not the first time Islam has attempted to take over Christian lands. They have been doing this since the first caliphate, and they are not going to stop now either. Why? Because Islam demands it. Remember, guys, I am against what Islam teaches, not Muslims. As Christians, it is a sin to have any hatred in your heart towards Muslim or any other human being. Muslims are made in the image of God like every other human being on earth. Being critical against a religion isn't the same as hating Muslims. Now back to what I was saying. I don't think for one second Islam is the force pulling the strings. I think secularism is the real force, is the real mastermind behind everything that's happening in the world, including the Islamification of the West. They are the ones who people call they. They are the ones who control everything. The West has the most powerful countries and armies in the world. If they wanted to, they could deport every Muslim back to their country tomorrow if they wanted to. It's secular countries, the ones allowing Islam to gain ground in the West. Why? That's a good question. Why? Why are they allowing it? My personal opinion, because the powers that control the world, the secular countries, view Christianity as the real threat to their aspirations than Islam. In fact, both have one thing in common. Both ideologies are against Christianity. I hope you guys by now know that Christianity is the most persecuted religion in the world. I'll give you one belief that Islam and the secular Western world have in common, and that is abortion. Abortion is permissible in both Islam and secularism. Secularism aligns with any religion that is against Christianity, including the Talmud. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed the reaction. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. And I'll see you guys next time. All right? Peace.